Hi everyone, Elsie Jensen here. Today we are making quite a crazy collection of food. We're going to make some chicken pot pies with a buttercrust lattice on it. Then we are going to make some peach crisp and some almond pastry and some lemon tarts. We're featuring buttercrust today because when I make it, I make a whole bunch of it on there. And I was asked to make some pot pies and a peach crisp for a family friend. So got that going. So let's start on getting the base of that up. We're going to take one onion here. We're going to mince it up and then we'll start to saute it. We're going to make our mirepoix, which is just an aromatic, chunky vegetables that we'll saute up. That's going to be kind of the part of the base of our chicken pot pie. And then we'll throw in some mushrooms, some fresh herbs, some shredded rotisserie like chicken. So just like leftover chicken that you have. And then I've been making my homemade chicken stock from leftover from like our chicken bones here. So you can see in it, I've got carrots, onions, but there's a leg right there, but amazing. It's been cooking right now for about 24 hours. We're like letting it simmer down. I add more water, simmer it down more to get as much flavor off of the bones and the chicken carcass as possible. But we're going to use some of that stock in our chicken pot pies as well. So let's get our onions going and then we'll work on our peaches. I grabbed some peaches from like this little local peach stand. It's always like they're all the way always out there. You just have to like hit the right roads on it. So we've got some great peaches that are like perfectly ripe that we're going to peel up for our peach crisp for it. But it's always like, I saw him on this road last time. And you go there and he's not on that road. He's on some other road. So you got to like sit there and search for them. And there's a couple peach guys out here. But we got them and those, they just make the best peach desserts. Let's get our onions sauteed up here. And then while those are sauteing, I've got some carrots that I'm going to give a quick peel to, and we can kind of slice them, dice them up. And then we've got our celery.
You have a question. Do you add any vinegar to your stock?
I do not add any vinegar to my stock, but a lot of times, because I make my roast chicken with lemon juice in it, it adds that kind of little acidity to it that gives you that base for it. But I know lots of people do add vinegar to their stock for it. I don't. My stock, I use it up pretty quickly, so I also don't need that much acidity in it because I don't like, keep it or freeze it or do anything like that with it. But so this one really just is like, our leftover chicken carcasses from our roast chickens, and that, we kind of cooked up with some lemon juice and I literally squeeze lemon over the chicken and then I stuff the things inside them when I make my roast chickens. And then some onions, carrots, a couple bay leaves, some fresh herbs. Let it simmer, really bring in there. So it's kind of like a mix between it's a nice chicken stock. So it's not just like a chicken broth, but a chicken stock. It has some good veggies in it too. So let's get our carrots peeled and then we'll get these diced up. That way we can saute them because we're going to be kind of wanting to cook the main base of our pot pie. So we want to cook these until they're kind of like tender, not, mush or anything like that. But then we can stuff everything inside our little pie dishes and then we'll make our butter crust. That's actually I made this morning. And I made a lot. I used 3 pounds of butter today to make my butter crust. So I have a lot of butter crust. But it's great because I'm going to use it in my almond pastry, which my oldest daughter has been asking me to make for a very long time. And then I'm going to make the lemon tarts that are for Father's Day. They're just a little bit late, life happens, but I finally got to it. And then, of course, the pot pie, because, I do make 2 types of pot pie. I do my biscuit pot pie, but my butter crust is my OG pot pie. And, oh, it's so good with a nice crispy butter flaky crust. Now for these, I'm just doing, since I'm doing kind of mini ones in little dishes for the butter crust, I'm only doing a top layer lattice crust on them, just because for the little like disposable pie tins, that gives you the better ratio of pie crust to filling. But when I do for like our family, and if I have enough left over, I'm going to do a big one for our family. But we're going to the pool tonight, and I promised the kids we could eat at the grill one more time before the school year started. So we're going to go there. They have really good pickle chips. And my oldest daughter is like, and I want mozzarella sticks. And I was like, okay. Yeah, typical grill food. They have really good smoothies too. So we're going to go there tonight on there. But if I have another extra one, I'll have it. And I think we might bring it with and have it on top of there. Or just save it. A lot of times I like to have little things in the freezer that I can heat up when I like, if I'm out of town, or sometimes soccer practice says it's going to end at one time and an hour later we're finally pulling out of the field. It happens a lot. I always say the soccer schedule, it's getting crazy now. I'm like, I feel like my email is just pinging with, oh, this is your game weekend, game. And I'm just like, oh, even tomorrow, 8 a.m. we have to be at the fields, which means early morning wake up. Kind of get out for us. Got to get off of our summer sleep-in schedule. I know my Evie came down this morning and she was like, oh, Mom, I woke up early today. And I'm like looking at my watch and she was like, it's 9:20. And I'm like, oh, honey, that's not early. And she goes, oh, why? When you have? And I said, well, I kind of slept in a little bit today. My sleeping in is I woke up 15 minutes later, but I got up at 7:25 today, and that's my summer sleep in. School year, I'm not sure if I'm ready to go back to the 5:45 days. I'm not sure. It's going to be hard. Okay, let's get these onions. Good stir. Kind of mix it around. But this year, at least, my 14-year-old son, he lucks out because the bus for the high school picks up at 6:18 in the morning. I know, insanely early. Luckily, his older sister can drive now, so they can leave at 7 o'clock instead of really early in the morning on there. So my Evie, she's in middle school now, and their school starts early. She says, Mom, can you drive me to school and pick me up? And I'm like, no, you are the last stop that the bus picks up. And you are the first one that they drop off. You actually get here faster than if I were to drive you. And she goes, I know, but I don't want to ride the bus anymore. I'm like, well, tough cookies. You can either walk home or you can ride the bus, but no. And she's like, why? And I'm like, well, I have to help your brother on the bus, in kindergarten. You literally have to be there when they arrive and pick up. There is no go out there and do it on your own she did in 5th grade. I'm going to give this again a little stir. I just like to stir it every so often. I've got it simmering on a high. When I have it simmer overnight, I turn it down to my lowest setting, which keeps it really, really, really keeps it hot, steaming, but it won't cause it to completely evaporate away. But in the day when I'm around, I turn it up higher, and then I can keep adding in more liquid when I need to. Okay, we've got our, apparently I had another carrot hiding in my celery. Well, we'll save that for another day. I've got my celery here. We're going to keep our little leaves up top because those are nice, lovely celery notes. Celery is pretty big, so I'm going to slice it down. Here we go. And we'll get these guys diced up and we'll add them in here. And this is going to be essentially, these are the aromatic vegetables for my mirepoix, which will give us the great filling.
Do you cover the chicken stock overnight?
I do with my lid. So I have my lid on there. Sometimes, since it's so low, it's not going to boil over. If you're going to do it on a higher temperature, then don't. But that just traps in that extra moisture, so it can't reduce. It will reduce a little bit, but not as much. Now, during the day, I keep the lid off because I want it to, I am essentially just constantly boiling off the water, adding more in. That just allows me to get as much flavor out of the bones and the skin and the chicken carcass as possible. And then I kind of go through there, and I kind of as the vegetables get a little bit more tender, I might give them a little mash so that it kind of becomes part of my stock. So, and it just gives it a lot more flavor than, your store-bought stock. Let's get these last guys all the way down here. And again, the celery leaves are a little bit more mild in flavor than the stalks, but are still beautiful to add in. Let's get this. And I almost, you can do a lot of different vegetables in your pot pies, but I almost do just kind of like a, like a chicken and mushroom soup type base for it. Now it's going to have a thick broth, like a kind of a gravy-like texture to it, but those are like the vegetables and the flavoring that I get with it. So very, very lovely and savory. This is, again, one of our like favorite fall recipes. Now, I do have my chicken pot pie recipe in my cookbook, which is available on our website, which is lcjensenkitchen.com, and also on Amazon. So in there, it has the pot pie base plus the butter crust that I do for it. Because, again, that's one of the good old delicious butter crust for it. Now, when I make my butter crust, now I made a whole bunch of it. I told you I made 3 pounds of butter worth of butter crust today. But for like a basic pot pie, this is a huge clove of garlic, guys. That is massive. Counts of like 3. I used a cup of butter, which is 2 sticks. So this is if you were going to do like a normal, just a butter crust for it. Then 2 1/4 cups of flour, a teaspoon of salt, and about 10 tablespoons of ice cold water. And so what you'll do with a butter crust for it is, you cut the butter into it. Like you mix the salt into the flour first, then you cut the butter into it. And then you add in that ice cold water before you do your press and folds, and then you chill the dough. So my dough is chilling in the fridge because that having it nice and cold when you roll it out will give you the more flaky layers, because you don't want it to be like too thick and dense. You want it nice and flaky. Here we go. Let's get these minced up nicely. I just want to get this going because this, it needs to cook for a little bit to bring all those vegetables get nice and tender. And then we can start on our peach cobbler or peach crisp filling. I always prefer to do crisps over cobblers because I love crisps. And so, but I typically will call them peach cobbler, peach crisp, but I'm always referring to my crisp.
What's the difference?
So a cobbler is more like a cake-like base to it, where you have that fruit into it. Like think about you have chicken and like the dumplings type thing. It's more of it has less of the butter and the oats and stuff like that. So cobbler has no oats in it. So it's just a different ratio, but it gives you more of like a cake-like texture with the fresh fruit kind of base on the bottom. And then like the fruit bubbles up into it. And then my crisp has that nice, oaty brown sugar topping to it. So a little bit different, but I love that. I love like a streusel-like crisp. Like sometimes, like I'll make, I do an apple lattice pie, but I love an apple crisp pie. Oh, it's really funny. So yesterday I went to the store and I saw rhubarb, and rhubarb's not common this time of year. And I was like, oh, it looks great. I'm going to grab some rhubarb. Well, my mom this morning was going to take her dog to get a bath. And she stepped into the store, and I think she saw the other 2 cartons of rhubarb at Publix. And she was like, oh, rhubarb, I'm going to get this for Elena. And she grabbed me the rhubarb and bought it. And so now I have to figure out what I'm going to do with, I think I have 6 pounds of fresh rhubarb. And so she was like, well, I'm definitely going to have to make a strawberry rhubarb crisp. And so if I have extra pie crust, I will do that with my pie crust. And I think I'm going to make some strawberry rhubarb jam / compote, which will be delicious. And so lots of things. And then we had to learn we did a whole little research on rhubarb and the leaves, because we were like, is it a fruit or is it a vegetable? And I'm like, it's a vegetable. It was formerly known as a fruit until the 1950s or 60s, and they reclassified it as a vegetable because it is a vegetable. But it's interesting because, growing up in Iowa in the Midwest, you have a lot of rhubarb there because it does not tolerate the heat well. It's a cold weather plant. And then, my mom growing up in Sweden, they had rhubarb. everywhere. And so I've always loved strawberry rhubarb. Like I always associate strawberries with rhubarb. It's like strawberry rhubarb, but you can do just a rhubarb. But I like them together. She also bought me a couple pounds of strawberries, so she has in her mind that there will be strawberry rhubarb pie or crisp or something like that on there. Okay, we've got our garlic in there. We've got our things. I'm going to turn this up just a smidge. Get that. We can get our mushrooms in here. And then I picked a bunch of herbs from my garden to be the herby base for our chicken pot pie. Get these mushrooms in. Here we go. We'll give this a nice little toss and kind of coat this up nicely. And then instead of making like a separate gravy, I kind of do like the reverse gravy part is once we have these all sauteed up nicely, I'm going to coat everything with some flour, and then we'll add in our chicken stock to thicken it up. And that's how we'll get our thick kind of gravy base for it. So kind of doing like a deconstructed roux base for it. Okay. Now, once these mushrooms have started to wilt and get a little bit of a saute, that's when we're going to know they're ready. But we can prep up our herbs as we wait. So in here, I picked some basil. And then I've got oregano. I've got rosemary. So, and thyme. So just some kind of classic base for it. But they'll add some great freshness on there. And my garden is doing so well. Again, it's just amazing how much rain we've had in Tennessee recently. Yesterday I had soccer practice. I didn't even realize it was going to rain, but it's an indoor kind of soccer practice they'd go to. And in there, and you could just hear it, and it was just pouring rain. And I was like, okay, well, we have things to do. So I took off my shoes and I made the dash. And I apparently had decided to park at the complete opposite end of the parking lot. And as I'm running, I look at all these empty spots, and I was like, I could have taken those spots, but no, I like to park in this really far spot because it's under a tree, which makes my car get not so hot. And it is like the farthest spot away from the door. But it's my favorite spot when we go there. So we're running there, get there, and because it had rained so much, the water went up to my ankles. And I was like sitting here, my kids are in their indoor soccer cleats, and I was like, I was like, you guys, sit under the tree. I will back out because I'm not replacing indoor soccer cleats because shoes are expensive. And I feel like they grow through them so fast. I'm lucky my oldest daughter, she's been in like a size 9 for a long time now, and that's wonderful because I have not had to buy unless she wears down on them, I don't have to buy her. My son, my 14-year-old son, who's like 6'2" now, it's like every 4 months he goes up a size. He's like 12 or 13. He's huge. And I'm just like sitting here and I'm like, I'm going to need you to stop growing so fast. It's like, I'm fine replacing the shoe when you wear through the shoe, not when your feet are growing so fast, because those are big feet. Nobody can wear those shoes. I can't blame it. I've got big feet. And my mom always growing up, she goes, I wore flip-flops all the time. And she goes, if you wear flip-flops, your feet are going to be flat and they're going to be really big. And my feet are really flat and wide and they are really big. And every time I tell her that, she's like, see, I told you. And I was like, yeah, I should have listened, but I didn't. Make sure to tell my kids that, but they all got my husband's feet and they're nice and skinny, although mine are the ones that have the Roman and Greek statues are created, you know. Okay, let's get the last of this thyme on here. And then you know what? Because these all have like a little bit of leaves and they're going to add flavor, and I always strain my stock. Instead of tossing them out, I'm going to actually put them in my stock because they'll add in, again, some more fragrant flavor to it. Just, again, a way you can kind of keep using stuff. I'm excited. I will say the boys, my husband and Torin. I'm sure Jack will help, although his help won't necessarily be helpful. But they're starting on building me my composter. I'm I'm deciding whether I want it to be a 3-bin system or just a 2. I think we'll stick with 2 because that's the space that I have for it. But they're going to build that so I can start composting my like little veggie scraps and everything so that I can have really good soil next year, because the soil in Tennessee is not as good as the soil is in Iowa. Nowhere near it. It was like when we were replanting our cherry tree for like the 5th time. We're digging up, and I find just natural clay, and I was like giving it to the boys, and I'm like, oh, this is clay. We can play with it. We can shape it. And if we leave it out, it will dry hard. And Evie was like, what? You can just find clay in the ground here? And I'm like, the ground is only clay here. That's why nothing grows well. Okay. I'm not going to put my herbs in yet. I'll get them a little bit closer. I want my mushrooms and onions and celery and whatnot to continue to saute a little bit more before we get them in there. But while we're getting that down, let's get my hands washed, and then we can start on our peaches base for our peach cobbler. So or peach crisp. See, again, I'm just going to call it a cobbler, but it's a crisp. We are not going to, you don't have to stew them as long as you do for an apple because they're pretty tender to begin with. But we'll peel them, slice them up, and get them in here for this. So we've got quite the basket of peaches here. I'm going to go through, I'm going to find the softest ones first because those are the ones on here. And you'll know if they have a good indentation if they're going to be ready to go. And we're just going to see how much I can get out of here. This one's good. Say, you know that they're fresh when you have part of the peach tree there. Okay, I think we should be good at that. Let me put them, give them a quick rinse. And then we'll peel them, slice them, make them delicious. Although these ones are very, very fuzzy. I normally always buy nectarines because I am not a big fan of peach fuzz. But I'm not eating it. I'm not biting into it. I love peaches as long as I don't have to bite them. Okay, sometimes you get one, you just got a little soft course. Just peel that off. It's good. Just means that it probably fell. I at least always take the skins off because I don't like the skins in there. They do get tender, so they're not like an apple, but they're still fuzzy to me. Here we go. So take them off. And then we'll slice them up. When you stew your peaches up, it's really like a minute that you just need to bring it to a boil. Let them sweat out a little bit of your juices. That way you can add a little bit of cornstarch to thicken it up. Otherwise, it's a little too juicy. Peaches are very, very juicy. So, but they're much easier to peel, I say, than apples.
Judy sent you a gift.
Well, thank you, Judy. We appreciate that. We'll get these guys out. And we'll slice them over. And then we'll get them up into our little crisp. I'm going to just season my crisp with some, we'll do a little bit of cinnamon, a little bit of sugar, some fresh lemon juice, a splash of vanilla, a pinch of salt. And that will just be kind of our base going for our peaches. And then I'll make my crisp topping with it. But peaches are a little bit, I like them to spice them just a little bit lighter than I do my apples when I make like an apple crisp. So apples, I typically will use a brown sugar on there. But for peaches, I like to use just granulated sugar. I think it brings out more of the citrus notes in the peaches. There we go. Just about getting all of that skin off. Again, you don't have to take the skin off. You don't want to, but I just find that it works out a little bit better. And I cut my peaches again a little bit thicker than I do my apples simply because they're more juicy. They will get more mushy. So giving them a little thicker base just helps them keep their form a little bit more. So we'll get these guys And then slide these over here. And beautiful. So that is 2 down, 6 more to go for it, but worth it. Especially right now, like I say, you can get peaches everywhere. It's like you go outside and, everywhere except when you're going to sit there and you actually want to go buy them. And then you're like, where are you guys? And I always see like the boiled peanut kid out there, and I'm just like, I wish I liked boiled peanuts that much. I know. I always sit there and I'm like, I tell my kids, I was like, we go to a lot of soccer tournaments. One of you guys should like bake something or do a lemonade stand there. I said, I bet you'd make a good penny. But then they're like, we'd have to work. And I was like, you'd have to work. Working is hard. My oldest daughter, she's slowly realizing that, I want things, but things cost a lot of money and I can't make a lot of money as a kid. And so she's like, what are some chores that I can do? And she's, in the beginning, she was very picky about her chores. And now I think she realizes that a little bit of money doesn't go that far. And she's going to have to start doing a lot more chores to get some more spending cash. Here. I'm going to peel this up and then we'll give our mirepoix a nice stir. And then we'll probably throw in our herbs and get our chicken tossed in there, and then we'll make our gravy base for it. And then we can probably start rolling out those pie crusts to kind of do the lattice topping on them. We're doing a bunch of mini, like individual pie things because that's what my friend wanted. She loves to freeze them down, and she's in like her 70s, so and she lives by herself because her partner passed away like earlier I guess it was last year. So I like to cook her up a lot of meals. A lot of times I give her, because I tend to make sometimes a little bit more than what my parents can eat because we're all like good family friends, that I make her a nice good serving as well. There we go. Let me get my hands a quick rinse, and then we're going to give that a stir over there, and then we'll drop in our herbs. Lovely. And again, you want to saute the base of our chicken pot pie because you want this to be tender. The pies are going to bake in the oven, but they're not going to bake super long, so you don't want them to be raw. Let's add in our fresh herbs. We'll give this a good saute. Bring that lovely flavor around. And then we're going to add in our chicken, and then we'll coat everything off with some flour, and then we'll add in our stock after that. And then I can move my stock in. So I've got my big bag of shredded chicken left over from last night. This is a lot, so we're going to add this in here. That was one of those things where when I make, roast chicken dinners for us, I make a lot. So that I have extra like rotisserie chicken essentially, or baked chicken that I can shred, and then I can easily use it for a quick meal. And so that's what I did. We baked up our chickens last night, and then we used our stock for it, and or the rest of like the carcasses for the stock. But just having plenty of chicken here because I knew I wanted to make these chicken pot pies. It just works great. We're gonna let this heat up just a little bit before we add in our flour. There we go. Give this a good stir. I'm just trying to make sure I get all of my vegetables, some of that chicken down there, because I want that chicken to kind of reheat, because you don't want to add the flour on when the chicken is cold or anything like that, because when we add in the stock, we want everything to kind of heat up nicely. Okay, we'll let that sit and warm up for a little bit while we continue on with the rest of our little peaches here. And then we'll strain out some of our stock here for this. It's kind of a great way to reuse, like, I guess, multiple parts of the chicken for another meal on there. Because sometimes you don't have the time, but I always like to make homemade meals for my kids as much as possible, or for our family. Just because it's better for you, it's cheaper on there. You know exactly what goes into your food. Whew. Get these guys down. Torn was like, ooh, what are all these peaches for? And I was like, oh. And then he's like, if we are going to have some peaches, right? Because he loves peaches. And I was like, we will have some peaches. I have to make sure. I might have to swing by and grab another basket from the farm stand before they are gone for this season, because he loves to have them in his lunches. And I'm in my mind thinking, what do I need to get ready for lunches this week? We did our big kind of I will say it's like back to school grocery haul. It's in my ear. And it's crazy, like all the different things just like changing. I'm like, okay, summer mode over, different type of cooking now, get meals ready, get breakfasts ready. What do I need to bake up? Because I bake, like I made my granola bars. I got to make some Chex Mix. I make a bunch of different like snacks that they can have that I can send to school. My oldest daughter, she was like, Mama, I want you to make your muffins, but can you make them mini on there? And I was like, okay. So I'm like, I'm going to start making some mini muffins, because at the store, Evie was like, ooh, can we have little bites? And I was like, no. But I said, I can make little bites at home. So I was like, I'm going to have to just get those, make up, because they love lemon poppy seed and like coffee cake and pumpkin. And I was like, you know what? It actually might be better to send them smaller, like 2 or 3 smaller ones versus a great big one. There we go. And then we'll get our base on our things. We'll give that a good stir here. Let's finish up there. On there. There we go. So let's get these sliced up in here for that. And then we're going to make our little pot pies today, nice and mini as well. We're just kind of a mini thing, but on there, I've got to refill my whole little like baker's pantry. Like the other day, I made my granola bars for my like for back to school, and the little kids have already been going. But Teddy was like, Mama, I want some of that. Can I have some of that now? And I was like, yes, of course. And I was like going there, and my husband was like, gosh, how much are these compared to buying them at the store? And I said, oh, this is like a fraction of the cost at the store. So yesterday I made up my was it yes? Yeah, it was yesterday. Our chocolate peanut butter granola bars. I'll go show you guys real quick, and because I got to stir my chicken anyways. I have them cut up and portioned. We've already eaten probably about half of them. But here are my chocolate peanut butter cashew granola bars made with oats, Rice Krispies, honey, peanut butter, brown sugar, cashews, and peanuts in it with some mini chocolate chips on there. And they are nice, really dense. They're heavier. So I have them kind of cut up into smaller squares, but one of these squares is like equal to like 1.5, sometimes 2 regular granola bars. Those like the chewy ones, the smaller ones. And I will say, like, I kind of factoring, I was like, oh, that was probably less than $10 to make it, but I probably got $20 or $30 worth of granola bars out of there, just based on, because if my kids eat granola bars, a lot of times if you buy the store-bought ones, because they're so small, they'll eat like 2. But these are just perfect to pack in there, especially for sports and on the go. You know what's in there. It's like 5 ingredients, and so much healthier. They have that honey, and the peanut butter tastes so good. I said, I'm like, oh, I'm going to put because I have my classic kind of granola bar in our cookbook, but I'm putting the chocolate peanut butter one because that's become our kids. They love the other one now. This is their new favorite one. I also do like in the fall, do like a pumpkin spice one with white chocolate chips and pumpkin seeds, and pumpkin spice seasoning. That one's really good. For it. But it's like a really easy thing, because it's like, especially with groceries costing so much nowadays, you can make so many things at home that taste just as good, if not better, using real ingredients on there. And we're a large family, and it's like, yes, our grocery bill is expensive because we feed 9 people every day, but there's ways to really bring down the cost. Like I make my own bread, and that, for like the sandwich bread and stuff like that, it's so much better, but the price is, I save like probably $2 a loaf making mine own, because mine is bigger than a standard loaf. But like sourdough, I can make my big loaf of sourdough for, I calculated $1.75 versus at the store, you're paying like 10, 15 bucks if you go to the farmer's market. On there, you know, it's the same thing. It's like a box of Little Bites muffins cost like $6, and I can make a dozen full-size muffins for like $2, you know, on there. I'll have to do, I always sit there and I'm like, oh, I need to go through and do a little price check. My mom has like this cookbook that she used to cook out of all the time when she was, you know, like when the early years when she was kind of, you know, my parents got divorced when I was 5. And so she was like a single parent for a while with a lot of kids. And so she was budgeting at the time. And this was like, and so she has in the cookbook actually written down the cost per serving for certain recipes. Because it's like she had a great job, you know, and she was a professor and everything, but you got a lot of mouths to feed. It takes money. And it's so interesting. And I was like, I would love to go see what that is from like the early 90s into what it is now. I almost want to see what the comparison of it, because I always sit there and I look through it and she was like, oh, these were like, you know, 10 cents a person to make these.
Judy sent you a gift.
Well, thank you, Judy. We appreciate that. I have finally sliced up all of my peaches. Now I am making a double batch of my peach crisp on here. And I do have my peach crisp recipe in my cookbook as well, which is available on our website, which is lcjensenkitchen.com. It's also on Amazon. It is one of our favorites. We're going to stew these up in just a second on there. I'm going to get them going once I can take this behemoth of a pan over and let it sit for a little bit. I'm going to first coat some flour over our chicken base, and then we'll add in our stock to make our little gravy. Now we have all of our fresh herbs in there, and I'm not adding any salt because my chicken stock has salt in it. It's, you know, like a reduction, so it's a little bit more salty than like your classic one. So you typically don't need to add anything else in there. We're going to start with our flour. We're going to coat over. I have a lot in here, so I'm going to start with about 1/4 of a cup to like 1/3 of a cup of flour. And I'm going to just coat everything up. And essentially you just want to make a nice paste out of it so everything gets kind of coated up and nice and pasty. And then when we add our stock in, it will like thicken up into a nice gravy base. I'm going to add a little bit more, but just start with a little bit to begin with. And you don't want to have your base for your chicken pot pies be too runny, or especially if you're going to do the double crust pot pies, because it can make that bottom crust not as crispy. Oops, throwing some chicken around. Okay, let me grab a little bit more and coat it up. I'll know when everything has this kind of white little paste over it. That's when I'll know I'm ready with it. And it can vary based on how much you have in here for it. And, you know, it always depends on how hungry were the boys the night before. Depends on how much chicken I have left, you know? And that's kind of where with them, because these boys could be very, very hungry. Like I told you the other day, Teddy, he normally will eat like 1 to 2 meatballs. He ate 4 meatballs, and they were good, though. He had 5 meatballs. I guess he did steal one of Jack's meatballs. 5 meatballs, and these are meatballs that are like the size of golf balls. And I was like, dude, how are you eating this? You know, I'm saying he must be going through a growth spurt. Like today he had some muffins, and then he had a whole big slice of sourdough toast with Gouda cheese and salami on it, and a whole banana and a whole peach. And I'm just like, where is this food going? He is like, I was like, oh boy. Okay, this looks pretty good. What I'm going to do is I'm going to get my fine mesh sieve, or like colander, this guy. It's pretty much a straining one. I don't ever put pasta there because the pasta will stick through it. And then I'm actually just going to ladle my stock right over this, and then save the little bits, throw the bits back in here. We'll add more water later, continue cooking it down, because again, it's all about making it delicious. So I'm going to move this a little closer. Otherwise, I'm going to end up spilling some. And I'm going to probably put about 3 or 4 cups worth of stock in here. But this way I can continue to simmer down and reduce it even more. I'm going to give it a good stir here in just a second. but you see a lot of it gets stuck.
You have a question? What's in the green pot?
The green pot is my homemade chicken stock that I've had simmering since yesterday, afternoon, evening-ish. And I'm using it in my recipe here. We're also gonna continue to simmer it, and then I'll save some. I'm gonna coat everything up. We're gonna add more, but to kind of get working on there. But you can see how, even though several ladlefuls in, I still need probably twice as much as what I put in here. But it will give you all that great flavor, and it's going to make this really, really delicious. And I will say, I like a good gravy base in my chicken pot pie. Each ladleful is about 1/4 of a cup to 1/3 of a cup because there is a lot of other stuff in here. So normally I'll have this already here, but I'm going to add some more liquid and get it going and continue to cook it down, because you can keep cooking. I mean, you can essentially cook it until your bones completely almost disintegrate, and then you have like a bone broth there. I don't go quite that far in there, but I go until they're soft, and then I will put everything through my sieve on there, and then I'll put it in like a jar or container, and I'll have it in my fridge, and I typically use it up within a week or so. There we go. Much better. And then I'm just going to taste just in case, because again, this chicken stock is a concentrate. Now, I didn't add any salt or anything to it, but I always want to make sure if I want to add more or if I want to add a little bit of water to balance it out, because it just depends on how much I've evaporated it off. I think I'm going to add a little bit more chicken stock, but I don't need to add any more salt or any water. I think we're good. But I do like mine in a nice gravy base, so get a little bit more in here. And then I'm going to put the rest of those back in here. And then what I'm going to do is I will set this over here to let it my pot is going to stay nice and hot. But that way, when I'm done cooking, I will pour in probably like 5 more quarts of water, and we'll let it simmer down more. Beautiful. Now that is going to be delicious. Okay, let me get this guy. I will say, let me clear this off. I don't need this. Words of the wise. This pot, it's my jumbo. I call it my chili cooking pot because I make my famous chili in it. But it is heavy. It is pure cast iron and very, very heavy. So I'm going to move it over here. I'm going to put my lid on it just to keep in the heat in there. But it should be good sitting here for a little while. Then I'll add more water and cook it back up.
Yeah, question. When you add more water to a stock, do you need to add more salt?
No, I won't. Let me turn that guy off. I won't add more salt to it because when you cook off the water, the salt is staying in the pot. It's not disappearing. So if you keep adding more salt to it, then yours will be very, very salty. So I add more water. I cook it off. That salt content will stay the same. The water just evaporates out. And so it's very concentrated in there. So don't keep adding in salt or you'll have a very, very salty base to it. And then taste it when you get to your final, thing. You can make it to where it's thicker. You can make it to where it's really a thinner broth. I tend to do nice in the middle, a little bit thicker than a classic chicken broth because it's a bit more hearty on here for it. But again, you can always adjust the saltiness there. When you add water, it's going to be diluted out. So you don't want that to be at your salty level. You want it to be when it's diluted down at your salty level. And sometimes it's a little bit more because, again, you're going to add it as like a flavoring. We're going to add in a little bit of butter here. This is going to be a double batch of my peach cobbler. So not quite as much as I would use, I'm going to use about 2 or so tablespoons of butter in here for this. I'm going to give it a good push that butter down to the bottom on here. And then I'm going to use, as I said, I'm going to use granulated sugar instead of brown sugar. I use brown sugar for my apple crisp, but for my peach crisp, I like granulated sugar. It's a little less rich in flavor. It gives you more of those citrus notes. Since this is a double recipe, I'm going to use about 2/3 of granulated sugar. You also need a lot less sugar with peaches because they're already fairly sweet. We've got that going in there. Move this aside. I'm going to add in about a teaspoon of vanilla. Just use my capful here. I'll do about 2 capfuls. This is going to give you just a nice flavor to it. And turn that down just a little bit. I'm going to mix it up. Then we're going to add in a little bit of cinnamon and then a little bit of salt and a squeeze of lemon juice. I'm just going to kind of coat it up here. Beautiful. And let's get just a pinch of salt. Just enhances the flavor a little bit. Let me grab a little knife over here. Some fresh lemon juice, because it adds, just like with that, it adds a nice spice of freshness. A half a lemon will do, as long as it's a pretty juicy one. There we go. Yep. Grab that seed. Don't sink. There we go. Sometimes you get really seedy lemons, and sometimes, and then about a teaspoon or so of cinnamon. You can completely skip the cinnamon if you want. Sometimes I'll add in a little bit of nutmeg, but I'm just keeping it pretty simple today. I want the peaches to shine. And again, we're just going to let this simmer for about a minute or two, not very long, just enough for those peaches to sweat out a little bit of their juice. And we're going to add in a little bit of cornstarch. That way our base isn't too soggy, like too wet. Let's get our crumb topping for this going. I'm going to again do a double batch. Let me grab a little piece of that peach out of there. And I need my butter. Since it's a double batch, I need a whole cup of butter. I'm going to melt it. So we'll just put it on here. And then we'll mix it with a cup of brown sugar and some oats. Cup of oats, a little bit of cinnamon, a little bit of sugar, some baking powder for it. Just getting all my butter in there. Sometimes you get it and it gets stuck over here. Okay. And then let me grab, while that's, I'm going to get my back burner on. While this is starting to melt, let me grab some of my pastry out. So I was making butter crust. This is 3 pounds of butter is in here. So this is 6 kind of sheets of pie crust, which makes a lot of pies, or a lot. And we're using them here because I'm using them in my almond pastry and everything. But they have had a chance to chill on here. And I will tell you, making mass puff pastry, or not puff pastry, but mass butter pie crust shell, it takes a lot of arm strength. There's a lot of going in there. And then little Jackie, because I started it early, he woke up and he was like, ooh, I want to do that too. And I was like, I don't really want you to help me with this. So I got him a Play-Doh kit to play with. I was like, you can play with your little Play-Doh kit. We did a little zoo Play-Doh kit, and I will do this. It's like, sometimes I love your help, but not when I'm going to be cooking some food for other people. They don't want your help. Here we go. Let me get that butter melted up, and let me grab a different bowl, because we got to make our crumb topping here. Grab a couple bowls down. We can start getting the ingredients measured in here. Once my butter is melted, we're going to add in a cup of brown sugar with a cup of oats and about we'll do 1 teaspoon of salt here. Now, this is my 4th cup, so I'm going to have to do this 4 times to make my cup. Here we go. And now this is going to give us just this really lovely streusely crumb topping on there that is so yummy. But we're going to start up by kind of mixing these first batch of ingredients together, but you add your flour in last. So we've got our brown sugar in there. I'm just getting it ready for when that is up here. And then let me grab my baking powder. This is the key to going from a streusel topping to a crisp. It gives you a nice light and airiness to your crumb topping, but you still have that rich kind of streusel flavor to it, but it's not as like strong. We need a teaspoon because this is a double recipe. So a teaspoon of baking powder. And it just it puffs it up a little bit more. We're gonna do a teaspoon of salt. And then a heaping teaspoon of cinnamon. Let me get this mixed. And then we're gonna add in, we'll add in a cup of oats as well, but I'm gonna get a fork to give this a stir and mix this up. And then my butter should be just about melted here. We'll add that in there. But we'll mix all those ingredients together. Ooh. But let me get this kind of broken up here just a little bit. There we go. And then we'll add in our butter, and it almost makes like a little sauce here. I'm just making sure my butter, I want it all to be melted up here. There we go. You can pour in, give it a good stir. So again, this is 2 sticks of butter. So a cup of butter, again, we are making a double batch. Here we go. So now we've got it in here. We'll mix this in here. It's kind of going to make like a nice little brown, sugary, delicious syrup. We're going to add in a cup of oats. I'm going to use old-fashioned, but quick oats work well. You just don't want to use steel-cut oats because they'll be too hard and crunchy, and they're just not the right consistency for this dish. Here we go. Okay. Nope, I'm not going to leave my fork in there because it will disappear into the bowl. I'll move it right over here. Let's get our oats in here. So 1 cup of oats, old-fashioned. Coat them up first. Then we will add in about 1.5 cups of flour. But make sure your oats are completely coated before you add the flour in so that everything kind of mixes together nicely. There we go. Now this is what we're going to sprinkle on top of our peach base for our peach crisp here, which we have kind of heating up. We've got our fruit heating up nicely. Beautiful. Okay, and let me grab our flour. So this is, again, our peach base here. I've got it heating up. We're going to add a little bit of cornstarch in here in just a second, just to thicken it up a little bit so it doesn't continue to sweat out and get too juicy for it. But you want a good sauce. You don't want it to be too jelly. We're going to do 1.5 cups of all-purpose flour here. So that's 1 and 1/2 cups there. And sometimes I add a little bit more because I really, at the very end, I go and look at the exact consistency of it. And if it's too wet, I'll add a little bit more because you want it to kind of crumble up nicely for it. And so sometimes you have a pocket or a little less oats or whatnot, but you want to be able to hold it together and crumble it apart. So I'm going to add just a splash more flour in this so that I can have that perfect, again, consistency in here. So there we go. And then we're going to break it apart. And essentially, you can see this one's still too wet because it holds, but it doesn't break apart. So again, just a little bit more until you get there. And that's just because when we use the US customary measurement, it's not as exact as baking with grams where you have an exact weight. And so sometimes your cups can be a lot more or a lot less. And so that way you always got to kind of look at it. So here's what you want. Break it and then falls apart. Perfect. Okay. So I've got it mixed up and I have got it ready to go. Okay, let's get these peaches finished up here. I'm going to give my hands a quick rinse since they're a little crumbly. We're going to add in just a little bit of cornstarch. Now, peaches are juicy, but they actually kind of give you a thicker juiciness to it, so you don't need as much cornstarch as, say, blueberries that are very juicy, or even apples can be super juicy at times. We're going to take our cornstarch, and I'm going to just kind of shake it over the top. You're going to use about a tablespoon or so at a time. And again, it's really going to depend because some peaches are going to be juicier than others. But sprinkle it over, give it a good stir. Essentially, you want it to form a nice little gel in the middle where not a thick, like, super thick, but enough where you can like cut your spatula through. But don't keep adding cornstarch until you've given it plenty of time to reheat and thicken up. So we added that butter in the beginning, and that just helps take away any of that chalkiness that sometimes cornstarch can have. But again, let it thicken up here. And it should be that once you've gotten to the right point, like the right thickness, is when you take your spatula through. Now I have a really big pot, but you can kind of cut it through. So you see how that liquid just falls in really fast. We're probably going to need a little bit more, but I'm going to let this get a little bit more heat first before I add it in. You don't want to rush it, I will say, because the heat is what activates, like thickens it up. And so if you don't have your whole base hot yet, then it's not going to be ready. But we will add just a little bit more because it is a big batch of peaches here. And don't just drop it down in a clump. Try to shake it over because cornstarch can also turn into like a dumpling type base in there, and you don't want to have little cornstarch dumplings or balls in there. Okay, so now do you see when I kind of slice through it, it's a much slower. I've got it kind of clinging. That's when we know it's perfect. Okay, beautiful. And now, since this is going there, a lot of times at home, I would just coat it with my things, although I typically do it in there. Because I'm making this to go, I've got my 2 aluminum foil dishes that I've got prepped and ready. This works great in the loaf pans, or you can also do it in the baking ones. I like the loaf pans in case it bubbles up. It makes your oven, doesn't get messy. And we're going to evenly divide it between the two. Just let me move this over here real quick. And I think a ladle will probably be my best bet to move this as evenly as possible without spillage. Now, when you're dividing up, don't just fill up one pan and move to the next. I find in order for you to make sure you get the right amount and equal, like peaches that are good peaches, not just mushy pieces at the end.
Jack?
Yeah, I am thinking of Jack there. You want to kind of scoop in each one. And that just, again, assures you that you're getting the right amount of peaches in each one, the right consistency. So it's not just the bottom of the pot for one. Here we go. Oops. I'm losing that guy. So good. Beautiful. Now, this guy can go over here. And let's add our crumb topping here. And the same thing, I'm going to go with my crumb topping. I'm going to do a big handful on one. Then we'll move it over to the other one. And that just ensures that it gets evenly kind of, mixed around. I was the youngest of 10. And so I always appreciate when everyone made sure you got something instead of the last kid going last. Although as a parent now, even though both my husband and I are like the babies of our families, there is a thing about seniority rules where you're like, well, they are just older than you, and that is why. And, and I'm like, gosh, but I really hate saying stuff like that because I was the youngest and I remember how that felt. But it's like, my 10-year-old daughter wanting the same thing. I guess she's 11 now, not 10 anymore. The same things as my 16-year-old. And I'm just like, you guys are very different ages. You guys are very different things. My oldest daughter, her feet have stopped growing. She's been in the same shoe size for 3 years now. So yes, she can get a nice pair of like a nice, more expensive pair of shoes because I know that those shoes will last. Where I'm like, Evie, last year you grew through 2 different shoe sizes. And so I am always like, I'm not going. And she's like, can I get, and this? And I'm like, oh, but those are very expensive shoes that you'll wear for one season. Okay, let's go get these guys in our oven baking up. These will bake at 350 for about 25 minutes. You're essentially, because the peaches are already started up and they are hot on the bottom, so I'm going to put them down right there. That heat conducts through. But we're going to bake them 350 for 25 minutes because really you're just cooking up the crisp topping. One thing, when you're putting your loaf pans in, put them in perpendicular to your grates so that they don't tip. I've done that before. So 25 minutes. Let's get some pot pies rolled up, and then we'll start working on the other things. Because again, this is the long, crazy prep stream. We're going to start working on our lemon tart base. Now, you might not get to see everything today, but you'll get to see a good portion of it. Let me wipe down because I've got some herbs for it. But we will go until, until the cameraman can't go anymore. So we'll see how long, I will say. Okay,
It depends if you make lemon tarts before.
I am making lemon tarts. I'm gonna just move all of my savory stuff out of the way because we're gonna use this as gonna be my pie kind of things, and I don't want to have anything on here. I should really say we'll go until the phones die. Sometimes the phones die before we, or battery loses charge. Here we go. That's always one of the things my kids are like, oh, my phone. And I'm like, why did you not charge it at night while you're sleeping? I don't know. And I'm like, that is when most people charge their phones. My kids, apparently, that's not a thing. Okay, what we're going to do is we will roll out some of our pot pie dishes. So we've got these cute little itty bitty ones. I'm going to scoop and fill them up. Then we can roll out and see how many we have. Then we'll make our lemon tart filling, our almond pastry filling, because we've got a lot here. But let me get these scooped up first. When I bake these up, it is easier if you bake them on a baking sheet versus on individually, just because you got to take all of them out individually. So I've got to make at least 10. But I think I'll be able to get 12 on here, which is perfect. I used to always just send my little dishes, and then I realized I wasn't, because I don't necessarily see these people all the time, and with my parents, that I wasn't getting my dishes back in a thing. So now I've got these little handy dandy things, because these are, again, a favorite in our that I make. Let's see, here we go. So we're gonna start kind of the same method with our pot pies. I'm gonna just do a scoop in one, and then we'll see what we have left over. And again, if I have a good amount left over, I might make a big pot pie. Or honestly, my kids just love this filling. It's so good. But when I'm doing mini ones, I just do a pie crust topping, because it doesn't, if you do the pie crust on the bottom and then one on the top, you don't get the right ratio of pie crust to topping. And so this way you can get that nice, you get the best of both worlds. And, it's a little bit about portion control, because you still get a lot of filling in here. But that butter crust, it's good, but it's not the most low calorie food you can get out there. And then, making them like this is kind of you can freeze them down. So you've got your little, who needs Marie calendars when you've got these sitting in your freezer? Although I did enjoy several Marie calendars when I was a kid. Actually, I think maybe when we were even dating in grad school, those are good little pot pies. But nothing does beat homemade, I will say. And it's because the crust, that baked in the oven, perfect butter, crispy crust. Okay. Let's fill these out a little bit more. Might just have to make a couple more small ones for my parents, because I don't know if I have enough to fill in a big one, but we'll see once everything gets this. But again, doing this the double scoop like this, it ensures you get an even ratio of the vegetables to the chicken on here.
Can you go over what the filling is?
So the filling in here is we've got our leftover kind of shredded chicken from our like whole chickens, and then mushrooms. We made a mirepoix with carrots, onions, celery, some fresh herbs from my garden. I used basil, oregano, rosemary, and thyme, and then we made using my homemade stock and flour. That's what we use to kind of thicken this up. Do you think? No, I'm not going to be able to. I was like, do you think I could squeeze another one in here? No, I know. And you always say, don't try to force it, but I do. I will have enough filling to go with another one. So I'm going to make this to the side. This will just be an individual one that we bake up on the side. So my parents, because my friend asked for 10, my parents will get 3. Well, we'll see. Torn might steal one. I know I was going to originally do them, and then the kids all asked to go to the pool, and I was like, okay, we'll see. I might actually just keep them up. We're about to have some crazy games. Maybe pop these in here because our little boys, they can eat. They'll share one of these. They won't ever eat a full one because these are, if you think about it, they're pretty filling here. And then we're going to top them off with our butter crust on top of it. Just make sure I've got them pretty evened out here. Okay. Again, clearing out some of the bulk that we have here. And we got this little guy on the side. Let me go. I'll start with this one. I'm going to go grab my rolling pin. And we'll use a little bit of a pastry cutter. This is where I bring out, I have my little fondant one. I bring out my big guy. This is a marble rolling pin, and I grew up using a marble rolling pin. Actually, our house, we had like 10 different rolling pins. I don't know why we had so many. We had wood ones. We had ones with weird designs on them. But the marble ones, my mom had 2 of them, and it gives you good heft to it. I have a lot of rolling pins too. I'm not going to lie. Because, different things need different rolling pins. But I don't know why my mom had so many of them, because it wasn't like she did a lot of baking. It was my aunt who did most of the baking, or at least the dessert baking, because my grandparents and my aunts and uncles, they would always come at Christmas time because they lived in Germany. And so they would come over and they would spend like a whole month with us. And there it was, my aunt would come and she would make all of the Christmas cookies and all of the nice little desserts that were wonderful. I remember, like it was growing up, the day after Thanksgiving was the day we decorated our house for Christmas. And growing up, we were like a maximal Christmas decorating, and I am very much still embody that. But lots and lots of everywhere decoration. So we'd spend a whole day decorating.
You have a question? What was your degree in grad school?
So for my master's, it's early childhood special education. And then for my doctorate, it's educational leadership and policy with an emphasis in K-12 education. So all in education. I was a teacher for many years, and I really loved it. When I became pregnant with Teddy, I decided to take time off and be home with the kids for a little while because I could get, do some consulting from home and, have a different pace in life. And it was, I have to say, it's been really, really fun because then came Jack and I was like, well, I'm already home. Let's do it on there. And now my kids are all like, you should come be a teacher at our school, or where they were getting a new principal. And they were like, Mom, you should be the principal. And I was like, yeah, I don't know. I like my freedom. Or it's not even like freedom, but it's like I like being able to pick my schedule and being home and being able to be for all the sports, because I swear from the time school gets out till about 7:30, 8 o'clock at night, I am a chauffeur. It's like I hang up my ball cap and I put on my chauffeur's hat and I am out there driving around. Sometimes, you know, where we live, we're like in the suburbs of Nashville, that sometimes the practices, I'll have 3 kids in 3 different cities. Literally, they'll be like all over, one in Brentwood, one in Nashville, one in Franklin. I've had one in Tulsa Station. I was like, what is going on? I said, these coaches, they all need to communicate with each other and map out what's best for me. Although this year I got really, really lucky. Torrin on one day this week, Torrin and Evie are at the same ball field, the same time. I'm like, winning. Okay, I think I've got this good enough down. I use this between 2 pieces of parchment paper. I'm just going to kind of push it here. I'm going to cut my strips. We'll lay it over. We're going to do lattice work, so you don't have to cut out the circles like you do with a pie pan, but makes it a little bit easier here. And I've got a little pastry cutter. You can use like a knife. I'm going to see exactly how big. Okay, so I think I cut, you know, let's get this guy. Kind of cut off these edges. Why did I grab this one? He's not my nice one. Let me grab my other one. I've got, again, a ridiculous number of pastry cutters. I even have one that I prefer even better, but I used that this morning. So I'm going to use this to kind of make my strips, because this guy will fit perfectly. And then this is, so you don't even have to do like a whole circle over it. Just do the strips. We're going to do our lattice pie crust. I can probably get several out of this one sheet here. That's why I said, it depends how far we're going to go with our pie crust today, because it's going to depend on how much pie crust I use. Okay. Let's at least get through with these first strips on here. Now, with a simple lattice pie, it's pretty easy. First, just start by laying your strips over, and then we will weave them. That way you know exactly how many you're going to need to go across. Here we go. So I think 3, maybe 4. I think I can get 4 in there. I'm going to do a thick kind of on that way. And then I'm going to do across the other way, and then we'll trim off the edges and kind of give it. So this is where you're going to lift up under. So you kind of do, you're back and forth with it. And then the other one, so that one was under, now you're going to go above. That's why I said the first ones you lay, the second ones are the ones that you're actually going to do your lattice kind of crust on it. And now when I'm doing like a full-size pie, I have that bottom pie crust underneath it. But with this, I do it that way because it's a little bit easier to go. I think I'm going to do one more right there. I think one more. But it doesn't need to be a full-size one. And then let's get this guy up, over, under. There we go. And now we'll just kind of pinch it around on here and just move it. And then what we'll do to make it all pretty is we will get our fork. And this way you don't have to do the whole thing, but you'll get your little lattice, like the crumb together. So pinch it, and then if we need to add what I like to say, a little surgery where we add a little bits on there, we will. Now we'll grab our fork. And we're going to kind of crimp the edges around so it looks nice. Now you could also just leave there, but this always just looks so pretty when you add that little on there. Here we go. And then our final, go back in there to finish it off perfectly. Just take scissors, and then we'll just leave those apart because if I need the little pieces to make like a little patch and filling, we'll have it right there. And there is our beautiful lattice pie work here. Okay, let's get these down. Got a lot of these going on it. Once we've kind of got these rolled out, then I will get, we'll start working on our lemon tart filling. So I use my pie crust for it, but the lemon tart filling will have it needs to sit and cook. So I've got that out there. It's yummy. It's, again, my husband's favorite. And now I always say lemon, but it's actually a lemon lime tart. So I use both fresh lemon juice and lime juice because it brightens it up a little bit more on there. And it just makes them so nice. And it's essentially, I'm making a lemon lime curd with it. That will be lovely. Here we go. Get this one up and over. Now for the pies, if you want to, you can brush them with an egg wash. That will give them a nice brown shiny look to it, but I've always just bake them up as they are to give it a nice kind of buttery crust for it. Here we go. So I'm just going to move this around, pinch, use a little bit of that dough that I had before so that I can kind of fill in those things. Because again, we just don't want to waste. We want it to all be delicious. Put in right over here. Because once you go to press it down with your fork, you're going to have that nice little crimpy edge. And then we'll finish it off with our scissors. Which, again, you don't have to do the scissors part, but again, it just says little final things that can make it a little bit nicer. Now, a lot of times for my parents, I don't finish it off for them, but when I'm making it for someone else, I make sure it's expert. And that just makes one go from looking, like, oh, cute, your kids put it together, to just a little finished edge here. And there, another one. Beautiful. Okay, I'm going to get this cut out and lay it out because once you roll it out, your dough warms up. And when it warms up, then it's not as easy to work with. When they're stuck and they haven't been rolled out, they stay cold longer. So we'll get this up here. Now, to make these, when these pie crust bake up, they actually get they puff up because I use my press and fold method, which gives them flaky layers. And that just makes them so nice. Let's see, I think we'll get that end off there. These are going to be a little bit long, I can tell you that. So I'm going to just cut off this hole in there just to make it a little bit easier. Let's get these ones, and then before we roll out our next one, we'll get our lemon curd going, our lemon lime curd. Now, this is when you do an actual pie crust, you have to roll it out in the big circle and then cut your lattice. But on here, you don't have to.
Brenda sent you.
Well, thank you, Brenda. We appreciate that. You can also roll out your little pieces of like dough here fatter, like you don't have to cut them as thin. Thin, of course, gives you a cooler little weaving look, but you could do fat and just do 3 instead of 4. There we go. And then just make sure that you change the directions as you go here. Under and over. And being on here, I do a slightly thicker pie crust because, again, we are not doing that bottom layer. So you want to have that good pie. Whoops, here. There we go. I was like, how did I mess that one up? And so you want to have just slightly thicker to give you a little bit more. This one, I don't think I need to do any extra added on.
You have a question. Do you have enough dough for all the pies?
I do. So this, I have 6, well, now I'm down to 5, but I have 5 pats of dough and I can do 4 with it. So I should have enough on there. Plus there'll be a little bit left over for each one. And that will be fine because these little ones can even be used for my lemon tarts because it's just base pie dough that you push into a little tart pan. As long as I make up the tart, the lemon tarts will get baked. Here we go. This one's got a lot of love. Beautiful. So that's why I say typically Typically when I make lemon tarts, I always make almond pastry, but today I was like, we can make this as well. Save these. And let's get this last one right here. And then we're going to start with our lemon tart thing. So with our lemon tarts, we are going to start with 1.5 cups of sugar, 1.5 cups of water, and then 7 tablespoons of cornstarch. And you mix that in there until it thickens up. Then we will add in 3 egg yolks. You mix that in there, a pinch of salt, and then you remove it from the heat. And then you're going to add in fresh lemon juice and lemon lime juice and zest on there. So there'll be lots of good stuff coming in. Okay, let's get these on there. A lot of times, last time I did this, I remember I had help. My husband helped me weave last time. I'm gonna actually, yeah. See, I will say, if he is given prepping directions, he's actually a really good sous chef. So got to give him credit there. He helped me make these last time when I had to make a whole bunch of them, and he did a pretty good job. I'm gonna cut off, and I'm just gonna turn this one into one because I realized that I was one short when I cut it. Under, over, under. Perfect. Okay. And then just take these real quick, and you see how you can just kind of squeeze them together on the sides. So sometimes if you're a little bit short, you might have to borrow a little bit of extra dough. If not, you do that, and then just put your finger underneath that aluminum foil, because the aluminum foil is not going to hold up as nicely as if you have real little pie dishes, but just give it a little bit of a tap there, because again, that little butter crust on the edge is so good. And then just take your little scissors and just snip right around. And this is why I have so many kitchen shears, because kitchen shears are a really great tool. Let me give these ones a little bit. There we go. Okay, we've got these. I'm going to set this dough to the side. This one we'll use extra right here for lemon tarts. I'm going to actually pop it in the fridge, but let's make our lemon tarts going. Then we can do that. We should have our peach crisp coming out in just a second. So this dough, I'm going to pop in the fridge because this one's soft and you want it for lemon tarts to be cold. And we're going to keep reusing that dough because we don't want to waste anything. 1.5 cups of granulated sugar. This is one of those recipes that I don't say I make it all the time. I make it like twice a year. But it is one of it's a very labor intensive with the little itty bitty shells. So I have it memorized by heart because I have made it so many times and I'm always like, I gotta make this one. But it is my husband's favorite dessert. And so he gets it on Father's Day, his birthday, and occasionally one other time in the year or so. 1.5 cups of sugar with 1.5 cups of water. So let me grab my water, a little dish here. And you're going to mix it, and then we're going to add in 7 tablespoons of cornstarch. And essentially, you cook it until it thickens up. So let me add my 1.5 cups. I'm going to wipe, because apparently I missed everything when I was cooking earlier, so just let me wipe down my stove. That's just classic me. You know, it's about the process. It's always like that artwork and it's so messy and it's the process. Or whenever I decide I'm going to do a deep clean of something, and typically when I do a deep clean, it gets way dirtier before it gets I'm actually going to do it over on this one before it gets cleaner again. And my husband's like, I thought we were cleaning here. And I'm like, I know, but I have to take everything out for us to clean. Okay. We've got our sugar. We'll give that a good stir in just a second. We need 7 tablespoons of cornstarch. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, You are lucky because we have exactly 7 tablespoons with a little bit left. Cornstarch will go on my list of more things to get. Always seems to be running out of something. We're going to give this a good stir. We're going to cook it over medium heat. It's going to take a while to actually completely thicken up. Once it has thickened up into a nice gel, then we will add in our egg yolks and then we'll stir it, cook those for about a minute. We'll remove everything from the heat, and then we'll add in our freshly squeezed lemon lime juice and a little bit of butter. And that will be our kind of a really quick curd for this dish. Let's go grab our peach peach crisp out of the oven here. That way we can set it down and let it cool. Let's see. Half lobster, half alligator today. Smells so delicious. Okay, we're going to take one at a time, but look at this gorgeous. You can even see the beautiful little bubble up. I just put it right here on my stove. So delicious. Now I'm going to change my oven here to 425 because my pot pies are going to bake at 425. And my little pie shells that when I make them, I actually will, you can do 425, but I typically do my pie shells at 450. The little ones when I'm making the almond tart or the lemon tarts. But here we've got these gorgeous, beautiful peach crisps ready. They are so delicious. We used all of those, peaches from the little peach stand, minus a few that weren't quite ready yet. Now I'm going to heat this, get a little of that cornstarch away. Just come back every so often, give it a stir. It's going to take a hot minute before it thickens up. When it finally thickens up, it will go fast. Let's get, we can actually use this for our lemon juice. I'm going to just drip out the rest of that. Let me get my little squeezer and my zester. I'm going to get my lemon lime juice ready so that when it is, I'll have it on there. So we need a little bit of parsley there. A half a cup of lemon lime juice. So I start off with my lemons and then I add, but it's typically about 4. I like to do fresh, none of the concentrate. It just tastes better. And then we'll need, and I'll get my seeds out when I'm done, but we'll need and we'll add in some zest from both. So I had this half already. So before I do it, I'm going to add in my zest. And you need about, a teaspoon of each. So a teaspoon of lemon zest and a teaspoon of lime zest. And then we'll get our lemons all up and juiced. Now it's going to vary how many lemons and limes you use because sometimes you get super juicy ones, sometimes you get dry ones, sometimes you've got a huge lemon or a smaller one. But you need about a half a cup, and I find that it's around 4, like 2 of each. Okay, that's our good. Let's get our lime zest in here. Now you could do straight up lemon and make it a lemon, things, but I love the lemon lime. It gives you a little bit more zing, on there, and it's just as lovely. Let's get these. And a little bit more. Again, you don't need a huge amount, but again, enough to it adds a little pop of color into it because your curd will be like a yellowish because it has a egg yolk in it, and so of course you'll have that yellow coloring from it, but you don't actually get like a coloring from the juice. There it is. So let's get this in here, and then and then I will fish out my seeds when I'm done, but sometimes it's just too hard. You never know how many seeds you're going to get in there. And then we'll get our pie crusts on our last little bit, and we'll get those baking up in the oven for it. But I just want to have this ready. And hopefully we'll get those out. So lots of baking today. What are we at right now? We are at about 1/4 of a cup. And these are very juicy lemons or limes. Sometimes I get limes and I'm like, there's nothing in this lime. Okay. It should be perfect. And we'll get these guys, and then we'll just let this rest. I have my eggs set to the side so we can, we'll get those going. There. We're almost. Just about. One more little lime. And I might not even need the whole one. And then we're going to give our base a little stir. Here we go. I think we'll be good. We'll have half a lime here to use for another. Let me get my hands a quick rinse. But we have that nice and ready to go. So we're going to give this a stir, medium heat. You don't want to rush it. I will say, you don't want to rush it. That way you don't have to stir it as frequently. But if you want to sit here stirring constantly, you can do it a little bit higher. You just have to be, once it starts to get hot, you have to be very cognizant that the bottom is actually going to thicken up first. And if you leave it unattended, you can like scorch it or burn it. So I've got it over about a 5 or a 6. So it's got a good base there for it. Let's see. Let's get this guy rolled out.
Can you go over what's in the curd so far?
So yes, right now we have 1.5 cups of sugar with 1.5 cups of water and 7 tablespoons of cornstarch. So that is all we put in right now. We'll stir it every, so often. Just give it a quick stir. Once you start to notice it thickens up, and that's after about 5 or so minutes, then you're going to want to be over here a little bit more frequently. You're going to stir it until it forms a thick gel. Then we will add in 3 egg yolks, and that will kind of make it our curd part.
Start game planning. You got about 25 minutes based on battery.
Okay. Start game planning. Well, we will get I'm planning to get these in the oven. We can take a pic on it. I can maybe make the filling for my almond pastry. See, it's technology. As today I was like, oh, this is going to be a bake-a-thon, but then, I always sit there and I'm like, I'm going to have almond pastry. I have granola bars. I'm going to have lemon. I would say there will be no lemon tarts. The lemon tarts will maybe make it to midday tomorrow, maybe, for it.
Do you have a question? What number on your stove is a medium?
A medium is a 5. So I will say it goes through 10, although the highest number it stops is like it's 8, but it goes 8 and then high. So it's a 1 through 10. So I always say mediums are my 5. And I always consider medium between 4 and 6. And then below that, you kind of got your low and on there. We'll roll this, guys, out. Let's give these a good stir. Beautiful. Now, also, be cognizant when you're cooking on your stove. If you're cooking on a big burner versus a small burner, the size of your pot, the consistency, if you're using a Dutch oven versus a metal one, they all conduct your heat a little bit differently, which means you've got to, the metal is going to conduct the heat the fastest. And so that can change how long it takes for something to cook as well. Let's get this rolled out. We'll get them sliced up and on our next one. And then I'll see how quickly we can get these out. We'll see. As we call whenever we needed, when we were on our cruise a couple years ago and we needed Teddy to walk and we needed Teddy to walk faster. He was like 3 at the time. My oldest daughter came up with this called Turbo Teddy. And whenever we needed him to go fast, we're like, Turbo Teddy, Turbo Teddy. And even to this day, if we need him to go fast, we say Turbo Teddy and he just starts running. And it's so cute. So maybe I'll put my Turbo Teddy on and get these cranking out. There we go. But we will always take pictures of everything. We can always make sure we do a little short if some of the stuff doesn't get in time before, the phone runs out. But, you never know. Here we go. Using my muscles. Now, again, you don't need to roll it super, super thin. I like a slightly thicker crust when I'm just doing a single crust. on it, but try to make it as level as possible. But this is going to be our butter crust that we're going to put on top of our chicken pot pie filling here. Our pot pie filling is made with carrots, onions, celery, garlic, mushrooms, shredded chicken. We made a lovely kind of gravy base using our homemade stock and some flour. And then, of course, we have our fresh herbs from our garden in it. Okay, we're getting kind of close on the thickening here. You can see as we go to it, you see how we're starting to get that gelling up. Now you gotta wait until it's all a gel. So this is like a mixture of the gel and the base. It needs to be all of that kind of clear gel. Here we go. And you can see it goes fast once you get to it. We'll let that kind of cook out here for just a second. And then what we're going to do before, see how beautiful that is? Gorgeous. I'm going to turn this off, but we'll add it back on there in a second. We need 3 egg yolks.
And do you have the recipes for these posted anywhere?
My peach crisp and my pot pie recipe is in my cookbook. And so those are, and that's available on our website, which is lcjensenkitchen.com. And then my lemon tart recipe, I think will have to be in my new cookbook with my almond pastry recipe, which we'll make in just a second, or at least the base filling of it. Everything uses my butter crust, which is always a great kind of way to use it. We're going to take our egg yolks, just the yolks, and we're going to mix them in here. This is what kind of makes your curd. Give my hands a quick rinse. And then we'll mix this together. You want to kind of mix it fast on there. But again, you want just the yolks, because if you have any of the whites in there, you'll get some of those little white strings in there, which isn't, the worst thing ever. We're going to put this right back over our heat now that I have it. You're going to let it cook over that medium heat, stirring constantly for about 30 seconds to a minute. This just kind of cooks up those yolks a little bit on there, but the residual heat will finish cooking them. Beautiful. So we've got that part. Now you remove it completely from heat, and we're going to add in 2 tablespoons of butter, because again, we are doing a double recipe here. So I've got my 2 tablespoons of butter, and then a half a cup of our freshly squeezed. Actually, this is not a double recipe. This is a single recipe. Everything else was a double today. So 2 tablespoons of butter, a half a cup of our lemon juice inner things. Let me fish out my seeds. I forgot to fish out my seeds. Well, I don't have to fish them out. I just have to use a fork here.
Why don't I get a double?
Because this makes like 70 tarts. Always greedy. Should just leave a lemon seed in there for you. There's only 1 in there, and it's down there. It didn't even come out. Look at that.
Or you missed them all?
No, I have 2 in there. It could be. I don't like lemon tarts. It's not that I don't like lemon tarts. I'm not a big lemon dessert person. So we're going to mix this in here. This will thicken right back up. This is our curd for our lemon tarts. So you want to stir it until it's all kind of combined together here. And then, don't spill it. Oh, dear me. Here we go. And you see how that's why you want your base nice and thickened up. You add this fresh lemon lime juice in, and it gives it this nice silky smooth texture with a really fresh, because when you don't cook your lemon or lime juice, it's really, really fresh. And so that's what I love about this. And then that butter just helps give you that nice richness to it. And then of course you've got that egg yolk. And this is, I always say, I'm like, I should make like a lemon muffin with a lemon curd dollop in the middle. I feel like that would be so delicious. Delicious. Oh, I did forget one thing. The world's smallest pinch of salt, a dash of salt. It just enhances those flavors. I knew as soon as I tasted it, I was like, I'm missing that. But so good. I will say, let it cool before you put it in your pie shells, and you need to let your pie shells cook. So I always make this and then it sits. Extras can go in your fridge. It's delicious on toast. And that's just that last bit of butter melting. Beautiful. But it has just a pale yellow color. And again, that is because it's just from the fresh lemon and lime juice and the lemon curd. Okay, let's sit that here. Let's get this out so we can get these in the oven baking up, because I have these getting picked up in like an hour or so. So these have to be finished. Okay, let's do our strips here. Kind of see if I can push. We'll just cut it right down the middle. I find it's easier just to do quadrants than it is to try to slice all the way across. Here we go. And you can use a big knife for this. If you have a pizza cutter, that is one thing I do not have, is a pizza cutter. I had a pizza cutter at one point in time. Who knows what happened to it? My guess is it went out with a pizza box one time. So
I think you're allowed to buy a second one.
I know, you would think, but that's not how my mind works.
It's been 15 years.
I know. You know how many years it took me to get an actual like meat tenderizer? So long. It's because I sit there and I need it. And you know, I could go and buy it on Amazon, because guess what? I buy a lot of things on Amazon and I am always shopping, but I never remember. That's what my daughter always tells me. You say you're going to get something, but I'm still waiting on it. And I was like, oh, you are? Are you? What is it that you needed again? And now she's got to the, she's like, sits and hovers over me. Put it in the cart now and purchase it now. And I'm like, we'll see about that. She's like, I need my face wash. Okay, let's get these guys stripped over and see if we can get them moving up before they get too soft. I'd say when they warm up, the dough isn't as easy to work with. It doesn't necessarily change the baking. We've chilled it. We've got those flaky layers, but it can be less easy to work with because it sticks. Let's do over under here because that one doesn't want to move for me. But the homemade butter crust, you can't beat it. It's so good. These are really, really long, but that's okay. And this one, I don't even know if I can get another one on there. Where's this little guy? I think I'll put him right over here. That way we have a little piece for him, but I don't actually think I can get another one on there. Okay, we're going to take our things to go around, kind of just squeeze where you have dough. That way you've got a base, then we'll crimp and cut. And crimp first, because if you cut first, then crimp, your crimping doesn't look as nice. And so it will look funky, but then once you get your scissors and you trim off that excess, then it looks all pretty. Here we go. And it looks more even and uniform. Just especially if you're using like the aluminum foils, use a push against the edge of it. You don't cut too down firmly because you can cut right into your aluminum foil on there. So always kind of hold it to this, a lightly edge on it. Okay, let's see. We get these guys on here. Let's see how quickly you can get these out because I want to get these in the oven, or at least get 10 of them in the oven. Now, this is something that if you want to like make ahead, you don't have to bake them all up. You could wrap them up and then bake them up when they're frozen. That will also work well. You can also pre-bake them, and then when you reheat them, just tent them with aluminum foil to prevent the crust from continuing to cook. So there is like versatility, especially if you want to do like a make ahead or you make a big batch like this. I find that such a great thing, especially now that we're getting a little bit kind of sports. Everyone's crazy, back to work, back to school. Having some things that you can have in your freezer, but still have good home cooked meals. This is one of those. Then they keep for a while. Like I said, my friend, she was like, when you make them, and she's like, and can you make me some extra ones so that I always have them? There we go. And crimp around. It was funny. So when last time I made these, because I think I made, gosh, how many did we make? We made like 20 of them last time. I had my husband. I like did the things, and my husband crimped and cut. It was cute. We were like a little assembly line.
I did not enjoy that.
No, I always say then you should appreciate my cooking more. Although he does, he is very, very thankful for my cooking. I could always tell him, I was like, you could be like, I could not know how to cook. There are a lot of people out there who don't know how to cook. But that's the beauty of like where I have like my cookbook and these videos is it is not a secret skill. You don't have to be highly trained to know how to cook. And all you have to do is honestly take the first step and do it. Like, and just knowing that you're going to mess up. I even mess up at times. I messed up a lot when I was younger and first learning how to cook, but I kept trying and I kept, working at it. And it's foundational. Once you learn one skill, it's really easy to add another skill on top of it or incorporate it into another thing. And it's you just build off of it. And when you start off with knowing how to make one recipe, eventually you know how to make a whole bunch of them because you're like, oh, I just have to same cooking technique. I just have to change the spices or something like that. And then you realize, wow, I can make a whole bunch of different things. And that's kind of how like I love cooking, but I was never formally trained. Everything I did was self-taught. And I learned by saying, hey, I want to cook this, let me check this out, let me check and see how we do that. And there are times where you're like, what does this mean? What does a soft peak mean versus a stiff peak? But you learn. And you'll learn when things don't turn out, and you'll learn not to do that next time. But it's a delicious journey, I will say. And it's a great skill. I always tell my kids, like, learning how to cook and budgeting is a really great skill that you'll have because, yes, going out to eat is nice, but you can't afford to go out to eat all the time, nor is it healthy for you. And so being able to whip up these meals or have things that you can do and then do a bunch on a weekend is always a great tip. Back when I was teaching and going to like grad school, that's what I did is I would have weekends where I would prep up so many meals, not just for the week, but for like a month long. And I had like crock pot meals. I make big batches of spaghetti and meatballs so that I could literally like just have meatballs there whenever I needed them because my kids love meatballs. And it was a great help. It prevented you from spending way more money than you should on takeout. Although now my kids do, as I always sit there and I'm like, I always was like, oh, you'll appreciate it one day. You'll be like, oh, I want this. I can't wait till my oldest daughter goes off to college and she'll have like cafeteria. And I'm like, you'll miss my food. But that's with kids. My mom's like, nobody appreciates what they have until they don't have it anymore. And I was like, I know, but a little appreciation. Here we go. And then I've got this last little one I can do right here. And then we'll go around, we'll crimp it up. See, getting these guys out pretty quick on there. And now, if you want to do the pie crust, look at this one. I didn't even fold that one at all normal. Look at it. It didn't go under any of them. Okay, we're going to have to try to weave here. It's going to be not. Here we go. I'm not even sure how I did that.
Trying to go too fast.
That's what it is. I had already started pushing things together. Okay, close enough. I'll tell them that my husband made this one. Okay, I'm not even sure. There we go. Somewhat. It's still messed up somewhere, but it's like my mom. She goes, I messed up somewhere cross-stitching. I have no idea what I did wrong, and I cannot find it. But she goes, only I see it. And I was like, yep. Here we go. I'll tell my friend, this is the one that you should put in the freezer and enjoy later.
Send that one to your friend.
Yeah, you're right. I should send this one to my parents. Although my mom loves it. She loves these. My stepdad, he always likes it when I make them in the big pies because then he can have a big pie. Like he'll eat a huge serving. And my mom's like, that was probably more than you should eat. Okay, let's get these last few going on here so we can get them baked up. And on there, I think we can roll out and get it there. And then we'll get it going. Next thing. Okay. I'm going to see if I can. I'm trying to get, there we go. Making sure I don't make the same mistake as last time. Okay, let's get these under, over, under, over, there. And then you're supposed to do, and then the very next one, you do the exact opposite. That gives you your little lattice weave on there. And over, under, over. See, now this one, they're big crusts, so I think I can only do 4 and 3. But we'll punch all of these around to get, that nice butter crown. And then pull a little bit over here. We'll crimp these up. And then I've got 3 more left to do, and we'll pop them in the oven. But I think I'll get we'll get them out. Or I'm going to get 1 more after this done because then I can get the 10 in there so that I can actually get these out from when my friend comes. Because you know me, and I always say, oh, it's going to be at this time. And, as my oldest daughter likes to say, Mom, you have time blindness. Like you say one time, and I don't think you've ever actually made that time. And I was like, not true. I've made that time before. And then I realized, I was like, you know what? Maybe I haven't. But it's funny because I'm going to take this again. We'll save these little bits that are to chill. And my oven, we'll have it up. The nice thing is because these are small and we're not baking through a double layer of crust, they're only going to take a little bit to bake up to crust because the base of it is already cooked. You just need your crust to get nice and crispy and buttery. So let me roll out this last one so we can get these, or I just need 1 more because these actually, well, we'll see. If I'm rolling them out, I'll probably get those up there on there because I just need 10 for my friend. Here we go. So I've got my pie crust here. And then, the almond pastry is one of my favorite things to make because it is so easy to make. We'll use some almond paste and then 2 eggs, some vanilla, sugar, and that's like the base. And then you just roll out 2 pie crusts, top and bottom, and you put the paste in the middle, you crimp it around, poke it with a bunch of holes, there's some sugar on it. Oh, it's so good. It's one of those things where even my kids, everyone's like, what is an almond pastry? I've never seen it anywhere. And I was like, it is a family recipe that is like no other recipe that I've ever had before. Now, it is similar to a Dutch letter, but it uses a pie crust instead of like a puff pastry base. But it has that almost like, that almond cream in it, similar to it. Not as, it's a denser one. So it's similar to like an almond filling in like a bear claw, if you were to have like an almond bear claw. But so yummy. Okay, luckily this one is rolling out pretty easy because it's thawed up a little bit. Sometimes when you get them right out of the fridge, they're so hard because that butter is so firm. But this one's a little bit more easy to manage. This is where I use, again, my nice heavy rolling pin because it just allows me to roll it easier. I keep saying I really want a sheeter. But if you've ever seen those sheeters, they're like $1,000. And I cannot justify a sheeter. I don't make enough puff pastries or pie crusts to justify that. But I'm like, oh, if I had it, I could make so many cut pastries. Would I? No. But, It's a fun little thing. Okay, let's get this out. You can see it's warmed up just a little bit, but I should still be able to work with it just fine. Again, that's why you want your dough cold, because it gets a little bit more sticky. Oh, just going to cut these through really fast. And then we can get them on our almond, or not our almond pastry, on our lovely pie crust here. I think that should be enough to get us through, but. And again, super easy. You could always do also just a straight up pie crust where you do the little circle on top, but it's not as cool. Okay, let's get these. I'm going to try to do a assembly line version of it. We'll see if that can streamline it a little bit better.
You have a question? Is there any gravy in the pie?
Yes, so they are in a kind of like a gravy base there. Now I think they've soaked up a little bit or it's settled down, but I do kind of coat all of my vegetables and my chicken up with flour when I'm done, and then when I'm done sautéing it, I add in a bunch of stock, and that will thicken up that flour into a lovely gravy base. And that's why I said you want to have a good gravy base, because you don't want to have a dry pot pie, but you don't want your gravy to be too runny either, because you need it to, especially if you're going to do a double coating, you need it to thicken up nicely. And otherwise you get like a soggy crust on the bottom. There we go. Okay, this one, I think I can do a small one right here. Okay, I'm gonna crimp all at one time, because that might actually go a little bit faster than crimping multiple of them. You got to get, it's like that first time long ago when I made homemade ravioli, I did it in a very non-streamlined process. And then I realized, oh, if I do it like this, it goes much faster. Or when I make homemade pretzels, I used to do the individual pretzel shape. Now I've got my really cool, twist and pull type thing that gives me a really cool like pretzel knot, which works much better than the classic pretzel design. Okay, under, over, under, and then I need a little one for this guy. Let me grab one from over here on that edge. And we'll crimp that. Okay. Just about done with these. I think I can use some of these smaller strips over here. Now, again, when you wait until it's there, ideally is nice cold pie crust, and that's simply because it's easier to work with. Once it softens up a little, it's still going to bake up beautifully just the same, but it gets a little bit more sticky. Now, my base, I again made 6 times my normal butter crust amount, because I'm making lots of different things. But my classic butter crust, for if you're just doing a single pot pie, like a full size one for a family, like a 4, is a cup of butter, so 2 sticks, with 2 cups and a fourth of flour, and a teaspoon of salt, and then 10 tablespoons of ice cold water. And that's kind of important, because that ice cold water, you don't want it to be lukewarm or whatnot, because you want it to kind of mix in with the butter and keep it cold as well. And then you kind of cut the butter into your flour and salt mixture, and then you'll add in your water, and then you kind of press and fold it together, and then you chill it. So I wrap it up in my plastic wrap, like my press and seal, and then I chill it for a couple hours. Here we go. So I'm going to kind of crimp all of these. Then I will make my little snips on it. And then the scraps I'll use for my lemon tarts and my almond pastry. Get these guys all crimped up. Now, they always say, it's always like if you're painting, until you use your scissors to trim them off, they look a little like Raggedy Ann over here. But once you trim them around, they'll be beautiful. It's that final coat, that paint, can always add a little level of beauty and covers up some of the imperfections in your dough. Let's get this up here. There we go. And then we're going to go pop these in the oven. Now, you can brush them with an egg wash if you want. That will give you a shiny coating on it. But again, I prefer to keep it more of a matte, and that's simply because I like the butter crust that way. But if you want that classic, out of a French bakery one, brush it with an egg wash, which is just, egg mixed with about a teaspoon to a tablespoon of water, and brush it over the top. But again, I just like the butter crust with that almost that matte kind of texture to it. Here we go. Let's get these all snipped up around. Again, that just is how you make it so pretty and beautiful. Lovely. We'll get these guys chopped up on there. Perfect. And then, forgot this little leg. And this is how you make a dozen mini pot pies. Now, this is a chicken pot pie. I also do like a beef stew pot pie and a lamb pot pie. Different seasonings, different fillings, but amazing. $4.25 because you want it kind of nice and hot. Top oven so it gets that direct heat. These don't need all that long to cook because the base is already cooked. I'm going to put them in here 15 minutes, then I'll rotate them so that the second batch can get 5 to 10 more minutes left. Now, we might not be here because we don't know how long the phone is going to last, but if we are, we'll see it on there. I'm going to get this little guy. I'm going to wrap up and actually pop them in the freezer as a one to go because I can't fit them on my rack. But I have this.
You have a question. How do you keep the crust from getting too dark?
So since I've already pre-cooked this, it doesn't need to cook as long in a thing. Now, if you have to cook it longer, so if you have a double crust, because you have to cook that one longer, you're going to want to tint it halfway through with some aluminum foil. If you tint it halfway through with the aluminum foil, then you can get, it will get like beautiful golden brown because that aluminum foil tinting on top will allow the everything to cook up evenly, like still cook underneath, but it doesn't allow the crust to cook anymore. So that's kind of what I do. Like the other day I made brookies and the cookie part always gets done before the brownie part. So I tint it and I allow it to cook some more that way so that everything cooks up as evenly as possible. Let's get these guys. I'm kind of just using some little scraps on this one. And I'll tint it around there. And we'll get these guys going. And again, you can always add a lot more crust around the edges if you want it. Sometimes, I'll add a whole strip around if I want a really deep crust or if I'm going to do a slightly different styling on it. But for these, keep it pretty simple. And then this one, what I'll do is I will first do like a quick freeze of it on like a baking sheet. And then once it's completely frozen, then you can put it in like a airtight container or like a little Ziploc baggie. But having it freeze first that way before you put it in something will prevent it from sticking. Here we go. This will be a quick, like any day that I'm out and the little boys need a quick meal, then my husband can pop this in there. And from frozen, you'll actually tint it, but it will take about 30 minutes at 350 to cook this guy up. He's so cute. So I got our little pie there. Okay, I'm gonna save this little scraps of dough. I'm gonna put it in I will say in the fridge to firm up on here. And while we have those baking, let me grab these little ones. I'm gonna roll out my puff pastry or my pastry for my almond paste. We'll make our almond paste filling. Since I'm only going to use 2 of those, I'm going to put this guy back in here because this will be for lemon tart time, which will be so delicious on there. And I think we'll have extra to make something else with it. So I wasn't sure exactly how much pie crust I was going to make today for this, but I made a lot. Okay, we'll let that sit there. Let's make our almond paste filling first. So I'm going to get a bowl. This is, I always say, almond pastry. I love it, but it's a little bit tricky of a thing to make because it's a very firm base for it. So different consistencies for the moisture inside different baked goods leads to, either chewier texture or lighter one. This is a very firm almond paste base for it. Oh, that one was open, so we're going to toss that one. Luckily, I have another box. The good thing you look.
Yeah, but what's in the pants?
So right over here, this is the peach crisp that I made. So if our fresh peaches, and then we've got over here, we've got our lemon curd for our things. Here we go. There's another one. So this is why I always have extra on hand. I felt there and I was like, this feels rock hard. I almost wonder if little curious fingers got into it. Okay, what we're going to do is we are going to take our almond paste. So this is not almond pastry filling. This is almond paste. It's a hard little thing. It's essentially like a marzipan. And what you're going to do is, this just makes it easier, is crumble it up to start with, because this is a very, very dense base. And so it doesn't have a lot of moisture in it, but that's just going to leave you a really chewy almond texture in between our two pie crusts. And this is our family's almond pastry recipe. It is so different from any almond dessert that I have, but it has that flavor, of a frankenstein, and but it's delicious. So this is 2 8-ounce, boxes of the almond paste here. You get it in your baking aisle. They have it. It's typically next to your jelly or your pie and things. But start by breaking it up. That's going to allow it to mix up a little bit easier. We're going to add in 2 cups of granulated sugar. This is going to give us a chewy base. Now, I always when I make this, is almost a double almond pastry filling base to the pie crust ratio. So I do almost 1.5 pie crust ratios to this, because it just, originally it was half this amount, and I messed with kind of the family recipe to make it where it fit perfectly. So we're going to add in our 2 cups of sugar. And we're going to mix this up. I'm going to do a hand mixer. Sometimes I do this in a food processor, or I do it in a blender, although the blender is really hard because it is a thing. I'm going to do it with my hand mixer, because we'll mix it up. Then we'll add in our eggs and our vanilla, and this will be the base for it. Let me plug this in my island real quick. But again, it's a nice and dense base, which I think that's one of those things. There's different consistencies that you can have in baked goods. And if you, I find if you go too runny with this, or use less sugar, or put more egg in, it gives you the wrong consistency and texture. It will run out of your pastry versus, mixing in. So we're going to mix this up in there. But a lot of almond pastry fillings will have either butter in it, or more egg, or less sugar. This is the perfect mixture for this. And it is a lot of work to kind of get it into where you want it. But I'm going to simply stop for a little bit, break these up, because the more you can get these in before you add in your egg base is better. So mush it between your hands. This is one of those things that it's just, there's no great way to do it. It's like the old-fashioned way where you would cut your butter into the flour. It's actually part of the method I use today, because I did such a big batch of my butter pastry. So we're going to work this in here just kind of perfectly. There we go. So you see now how it's incorporating nicely, and you want to get this. Then we're going to add in our egg and our vanilla, and that's all the liquid. And so it's going to actually make a pretty thick base that we will spread between our 2 pastry sheets, and then we bake them at 350, and they're just amazing. Okay. But the slightly higher sugar content to the lower egg, basing gives you a thick, somewhat chewy texture to it. And you'll have it between 2 sheets of butter crust. Amazing. Just delicious. Let me grab my measuring spoons. I'm going to give this a quick whisk with my thing to get it right where you want. But I said take your time on this, because this is where it just takes a little bit to get that almond paste broken down into the right things. A food processor, but the problem is I do such a big batch that it doesn't all fit in my food processor. Sometimes I feel like I need an industrial kitchen cooking for our family. But this is, again, this is like a a favorite. And it's so unique. And that's what I think is like, I have never found this at a pastry shop or anywhere, like the way it's done. I found things that are similar in the same flavor profile, but never quite the same as this. There we go. We're just about perfect here. Again, you see how that almond is almost completely mixed up in here? Gorgeous. Okay. Getting some of those big chunks. I'll go through, break up some of those big chunks again, just so that it's finally there. And then we're gonna add in our eggs. We're gonna add in 2 eggs and then 2 teaspoons of vanilla. And again, this is because I like to make a double batch of my filling per like per the crust, because it just gives you more of that almondy deliciousness. And then 2 teaspoons of vanilla. Now you can also switch out and do like some almond extract, but I find that the almond paste filling is strong enough that you don't need almond extract. But if you make your own almond paste using blanched almonds, use almond extract to give you that strong almond flavor. That's the one time I would say is if you use your own almond paste versus the one that you get at the store. But don't get almond pastry filling. You have to get almond paste. There we go. We're going to mix this around. Gorgeous. Look how it's nice and incorporated. I'm going to turn it up a note. And you can also do this with a stand mixer on your paddle. That works fine. But again, a food processor. Lovely. Get this mixed around. Gorgeous. So we've got our lovely almond pastry base here. I'm going to get a little spatula, give it a good stir around, and then we will roll out our pastry sheet. And all you have to do is 2 big, long rectangles on there. So think about making those like giant Pop-Tarts. That's essentially what you're doing. And then we'll spread this in there. Lovely. Okay. Let's get that, set that to the side. I always say this one is a breeze compared to the next, because what we'll use for the lemon tarts is you actually push them into little mini muffin pans and you bake them up and then you'll fill them with there. But this is easy. Let me get my butter pastry right here. And we're going to kind of, between 2 pieces of parchment paper, we'll roll it out. But the nice thing is there's no cutting. You literally just roll one big rectangle, then you roll another one and you place them on top of each other after, simple. And that's why when I freeze or put my thing in the fridge, I make them into big rectangles so that they are just easier to work with.
Do you have a question? Do you ever find yourself giving directions if you're not streaming?
I don't think so. I always am like I think it's the natural like teacher in me on there. So if I see people needing help, I will. But I also know that like with some people in the kitchen, like some people like to be alone in the kitchen when they cook. They like nobody else in the kitchen, and other people like that. So I always try to respect whoever I with. Like my brother-in-law, he is very much the I'm in the kitchen, no one else is in the kitchen on there, because he just likes to be able to think and process. If it's my mom in the kitchen, yeah, I'll give her direction. Or I always love this, and it always would be like out of my my stepdad thinking he's doing the right thing, but he'll like come in and he'll stir something, or he'll like turn the temperature down. He goes, "Oh, well, I thought it was bubbling, so I thought you'd want to turn it down." I was like, "No, I'm reducing it. I want to," on there. But
I think they meant when you're alone.
Oh, when I'm alone, do I? Well, I
gotta have it.
Yeah, you know what I do? I kind of like, I'm one of those like people who will like talk out loud to themselves, or in the sense of like problem solving for it. But okay, get my arms. This is like a good workout today. I'm glad Saturdays are typically my workout skip days. So.
Are you making all of this ahead for the week, or?
Yes and no. So part of it is going to be for us for the week, like the almond pastry. The lemon tarts are a belated Father's Day because it's one of those meals I make from when we were out of town. And then my the pot pies. Actually, a friend asked me if I could make pot pies and peach crisp for her, so I said I would. And so I was like, "Ooh, buttercrust!" We are making all of my favorite buttercrust dishes, so it's kind of like worked out well. Okay, got this one. We're gonna put it on there, and then we'll check. I think I set my timer. Let's see what our in about 1 minute we'll have, and we'll rotate our pies. Let me get my baking sheet here.
You keep saying puff pastry, just to clarify it.
It is pie crust, not puff pastry, pie crust. It puffs up, but it is not puff pastry. No, there is a, I don't know why I keep saying it. My pastry crust here, my pie crust. It's just a pie crust. Here we go. Peel this off. This is going to be our base layer. So what I'm going to do, and I always make my base one really big. Put it over here on your baking sheet. And I always say mine is never, I don't like make it to fit perfectly on the baking sheet. I just roll it out big and then I will fold things over. Let's get this off before you see when your dough gets a little bit warm, it sticks a little bit more. There we go. But I want to get it off before it sticks too much. And then what we're going to do is, let me get this fluffed up right there. We lost a little bit of dough. Okay, we'll put in our almond paste filling, but let's go rotate our pies, our little pot pies. They've been in there for, we had it on there for about 15 minutes, and then we're going to rotate, and we've got 5 to 10 minutes more based on it. I mean, I'm taking a new glove every time. I've got a lot of these. Look at this. Gorgeous. So we'll just rotate that way because you can see that edge bakes up more. I'm going to say these are going to need like 7 more minutes, 8 more minutes. But rotate it so it bakes up evenly for it. And I have it at 425. Let's see. Why? Okay, let me do. We'll bake those up nicely. Pull it out just a little bit. There we go. But they puff up. That crust, it's because I do so many press and folds in the layer of it, and it makes it so delicious. Okay, I'm gonna just throw this in my fridge to do a quick chill while we put the pastry out so that it's not quite as soft, because sometimes it takes me a little bit longer to work here.
And what's in your pot pie?
My pot pies are a chicken base. So here's one that we haven't baked up. We're gonna actually freeze. It is chicken, carrots, onions, celery, mushrooms, garlic, and then we use fresh herbs from my garden, rosemary, basil, thyme, oregano, and then my homemade stock, and then a little bit of flour. So delicious kind of things. And then we have a butter crust over the top, which is the same crust that I'm using here, that is made with butter, flour, salt, and water. So here is our little almond base here. We're going to spread it over here. It is a thick little base, so it doesn't spread so easy, but it cooks up and it gives you this just amazing chewy almond part into it. So just try to spread it as far. Leave a little bit of clearance on the edge because you want to be able to seal up your pastry crust with your top crust, so that none of the filling can ooze out. Now, I give ours a really thick almond filling because that is what everybody loves. But again, I do a double with kind of 1.5 the pastry, like the bread or the pie crust. But you can always do a little bit less for it. Now, this is going to be in our new cookbook because this is one of our favorite ones. But my chicken pot pie, my peach crisp recipe. Those are in my current cookbook, which is available on Amazon and on our website, which is lcjensenkitchen.com. That butter crust recipe is in there because it is with my pot pie recipe, so it tells you how to make it as well. But it is so, so yummy and delicious. And then I think I might have a whole little pie crust section because there's so many different things. Like we're going to make our almond tarts, but there's so many different things that I use my butter crust for other than just a pie.
You do make almond tarts, but you're making
lemon tarts. Yes, yes. Ah, there's my brain on here. And this is really, really delicious. If you love almonds, this is the thing for you. Okay. I've got this one down. We're going to make our pie crust to go on top. When we'll seal it up and we're going to poke a bunch of holes in it. I just wanted to give it a quick chill for it. And then this will bake up in the oven at about 350. This takes like 30 minutes, so you guys won't be here for when it comes out. But essentially, you're baking it up until it's nice and golden. But when we seal it up, we poke a bunch of holes, we sprinkle sugar over it. So good.
Do you think you'll ever make a cookbook with just dessert?
You know what? I probably will. I've got so many ideas on what to do. We've got our next one, which will be, a conglomeration of different things, like our first one, which has a dessert section and a muffin section and a scone section. But yeah, I'm sure I will do one that is just desserts because I love desserts. It's what my sister used to always say growing up. Because I love salads. Like I crazy love salads. I think they're so delicious. And she was like, and it was always in the summertime because I would spend like summer with her during like when I was in college and help watch her kids. And she was like, you eat like 2 salads a day and 5 desserts. And I was like, yep, I love it. Cookie dough. That summer, one summer I always remember, but it was like the summer we made broccoli salad like twice a week. We had cookie dough, banana bars, chocolate lava soufflés. It was a summer of delicious food. Okay, we're gonna roll this out here. And then I always just make sure that my bottom crust is my largest crust because I kind of like to fold the edges up over.
And my phone's got like 5 to 10 minutes, so this, that, and a couple tarts.
Okay, yes, we'll get the tarts going out here in just a second. Those are easy for it. There's lots of things to do. Okay. Let's get this rolling. See, it wasn't me. It was the phones.
Yeah, the phones and the camera guy.
The camera guy, he was like, it's hard to hold this up. Here we go. I know. And when we first, originally decided to try streaming like a year and a half ago, my husband's like, you could just do it with a tripod. And I was like, no, I kind of really want you. I think it'll give a better angle. And we did it. I was like, you're never going to get that tripod. Okay, let's get this top one. You see just even that quick cooling, how it just peels off much nicer. And then we're going to flip this over. This is why I do it on parchment paper, because you can easily just lay it on top. And then you got it. And then we'll peel it off. And there we go. Lovely. Perfect. Now, add that to my pile. Let me grab a fork. Actually, let me grab a fork. I don't have it over there anymore. Because we're going to, essentially, I'm going to seal everything together, then we're going to crimp. So just take your edge, because remember, we didn't put the almond pastry all the way to the edge. So you're just going to kind of crimp everything together, then we will go and use our fork to give you that pretty edge. But you want to make sure you seal it, because if you don't seal it, then that almond delicious filling can ooze out.
Have you ever done this with pie fruit?
With like, putting fruit inside instead of almond. Yeah, you can definitely make like the sheet pan pies for it on there. But when I do this, typically I'll make just a classic pie instead of a sheet pan pie, but you can definitely do like a sheet pan pie for it, because those are great especially for like a crowd on there. Here, and now let's go. And then it'll be about time. So now I take my fork and I'm just going to push it in here. And I always say it looks kind of like a giant Pop-Tart almost. And then when we come back, let's pause. Let's go grab, because I hear things. Because I still got to poke it. I was like, oh, maybe I can get it all done. Okay, let's get these guys out of the oven. And look at these gorgeous. Let me grab this. Again, this is why I do it on a big baking sheet, because instead of taking 12 pies out at a time, you get one beautiful baking sheet. And you can see how they are just perfectly golden crisp. I'm going to slide these right here. Pull that, because I want to go turn my oven down to 350, because that's what my almond pastry is going to bake at. So let me get that. Okay, got it. Okay, these are my chicken pot pies are baked up with that butter crust, but do you see how you get these nice, beautiful, flaky layers? That is when I'm making the pie crust, especially right here, you can really see the flaky layer on there. That is the press and folds, press and folds. I press and fold my dough together. I'll have that same here on my almond tart. So it does puff up a lot. My almond, woo, my brain is not working on my almond pastry today. And I keep calling this puff pastry, but it's just my butter pie crust on there. But it gives you that nice kind of delicious puff and crust like to it. So it puffs up a lot, but it is just a pie crust. Okay, and then, because you need to let air steam out, you take your fork and you're just going to poke a bunch of holes through your crust. And this is so that your pastry doesn't puff up like a pot pie that's about to burst. And then the last thing, and I always do probably way more than you need, but you know. And then we're going to take the sugar and you're going to sprinkle the sugar over the top to give it a little bit of sweetness. Now you have your nice almond pastry sweetener, like, inside, but this gives that crust part just a little bit of extra sweetness. Here we go. And we're going to go pop this in the oven. A little shaky, shaky. And you only need probably, it's like a few, hardly any, but it just adds this little bit of extra touch. Now this is going to bake for about 30 minutes in the oven at 350. But I also rotate it. So I'm going to put it in for 20 minutes, rotate it for the last 10 to give it kind of a very even bake for it. Okay.
You have a question. So is the only thing between the pie crust the almond paste?
Yes, and it's like a dense almond paste to it. It soaks up into the crust a little bit, but you have this almond like chewy filling to it that is so delicious.
Is there stuff mixed with the paste?
Yes, so it is not just almond paste. It's an almond paste mixed with sugar, egg, and vanilla. So it's not as like creamy as a frangipange, which is like your almond cream made with an almond paste. It is denser. So it's made for certain types of, it's made for really sturdy pastry like crust, like pie crust, so a butter crust, or if you're going to do a bear claw, which is a slightly different type of crust than some like a croissant or whatnot. So it is a hearty almond paste filling, but it is sweetened and delicious. Okay, let me so we've got this is our curd for our lemon thing. We actually fill these once our lemon shells are up. So I'm going to get some of my lemon shells up and baking. I think I need to go out and grab my little lemon tart pan. So I'm going to go grab those real quick out of there. Okay, so what I use for my lemon tart pans are just simply little muffin pans. So this is going to make a lot of these, and these are my like least favorite things to shape up. I have tried several different ways: rolling, cutting, doing all of that, really the best way is we'll give everyone a little spritz. I always like to just wash them, you know, because sometimes dust gets a little collected in there when I don't use a muffin. Although my oldest daughter was like, you need to make some mini muffins. I want mini muffins now. And I'm like, okay, we'll start making mini muffins. So we'll spray these down and then we push the pastry dough in there to shape it. So I will say they are not your picture perfect pastry cut looking on it, but they are actually more of when you fill them up, they look more pretty, but they always look a little fun when you're doing it. I've got all of my little samples of it. We're going to use those up and then on there. And that's why I said your pastry dough is still good. Like all your little scraps that we didn't use. We're going to spray this down. Here. And then we'll get these. Now these bake up around 450-ish. So, you know, our oven's right now at 350. So we'll have to, once they come out, we'll pop them in and bake. They only take about 5 minutes to bake up, if even. They bake really, really fast. I found the best way to do this is to just take your dough at first, put like a little piece in every one. That way we can go through with our thumb and then press it into the base of it.
And this is why you hate it.
This is why I hate it. I hate this part. It's my least favorite part of it. It's just so tedious. And it would be one thing if I was only making like, you know, 36, but I make like 72. And I make a lot of them. And they disappear really fast. So it's not even like, oh, I made a bunch and we have these. No, I made 72 of them and they were gone before dinner time the next day. Because these are my husband's weakness. These are his Achilles heel. Like if I make them, they get eaten so fast. And he does not even eat these like a normal human being. Like I swear, I'm like, how could you eat like 12 of them in one sitting? 20 of them in one sitting? Probably 30. It's like eating a full pie in one sitting. And he just loves it. He's always the one where he was like, don't tell your mom you made these. He doesn't like to share them. I remember one year I made them and I made sure because his dad loves them too. And I made sure, and he came over and he ate like half of them too. And my husband's like, oh, my lemon tarts.
Interesting tip. Did you ever try to use a shot glass to press them?
No, you know what? No, I haven't. I don't even know if I have one. But you know what? I've seen like the little press things but you cut it out and you press it in. And I have one of those like pretty French tart pans that you roll it out and you use the little press in it. He didn't like it when I did it like that. And I mean, I'm kind of glad because I thought that was more work than that. But I don't know. I guess I could probably, if I could get one that was like the perfect thing. But one thing I have noticed is that like I own several different mini muffin pans. And these are the sets that I got where they were like actually part of a cookie decorating set, which I'm like, why do you have many? But they had sprinkles and decorating things all inside them. And then I had so many of them that now they're my mini muffin pans and I love it. But I also have like mini muffin tins that are like slightly larger than this and slightly like flatter, and they're a weird shape, and he doesn't like it when I do them in there either because it's not the right ratio.
I agree. It has to be this way.
Yes, there's just like things. Now, when I make homemade like Reese's peanut butter cups, I use this size for the Reese's peanut butter cups, and oh, they were so good. I haven't made them in a long time. I used to in high school. Used to make the mini Reese's PC like peanut butter cups all the time. My friends always are like, can you make it for our bake sale? We have a bake sale and yours always sell out. Everybody buys those. And I used to always just make them for everyone. I'd make so many of them and they would sell like 2 for $1 back in the day. Good old high school bake sales. Back when you could still do that. Okay. Now, when they bake up, they puff up a little bit too, but then you just take a dollop of your tart of your lemon curd in there and you put it in. So we'll get these guys filled out and then we'll get everything. I think this is the part is because I'll put it in there and like it's never like I put the perfect amount in each one. I always find that I'm like, oh, this one needs more. Now, don't overbake these. Essentially, it's about 5 minutes at 450. You can do them at a lower temperature. It just takes longer. You take them when they're starting to get golden on the edges. But if you actually were to touch the tart at that time, they'd be a little bit soft. They need to cool down. When they cool down, they crisp up. Okay, let's get these here. And then we'll pop them in, but it seems like our foam battery is almost out. So we might have to, what are we at? Are we on our last percentage? So we might have to do a quick send off here on there. So we'll go and take a quick peek at it and then we'll just do a big recap here because.
And we'll do a short later.
Yes, we'll do a short with everything when it's actually baked up because I'll make sure we do a short of the lemon tarts before he's allowed to eat any of them. Otherwise, there won't be any left for the short here. Okay, let's see. While we're doing that, we can do a quick recap. So we've got this is our butter pie crust that we're making for our little tart shells that we're going to be using for our lemon curd. We made, I always say lemon curd. It's technically a lemon lime curd. It has lemon juice, lime juice, 3 egg yolks, sugar, cornstarch, a little bit of salt and butter, but it's sweet and tangy and smooth. We baked up our chicken pot pies here. Again, this is with the same butter crust, so I don't put any sugar in my butter crust, so it can go sweet or savory. And it has our lovely kind of creamy chicken pot pie filling with carrots, onions, celery, mushrooms, fresh herbs from my garden. We made 2 delicious peach crisps here with our peach filling from our peaches from a little farm stand and a nice kind of graham crackery crumb crust to it, crumb to it. And then we have in our oven baking up right now our beautiful almond pastry here. So we have our butter crust, which is top to bottom, and then we made a lovely, delicious almond paste to go in the middle using almond paste, sugar, vanilla, and eggs. Well, guys, our phone's about to die, but don't forget to like and subscribe. I try to do live cooking shows every single day, kind of show you what we're making for our family and hopefully teach you guys something along the way. Again, we have our website, which is lcjensenkitchen.com. And on our website, we have our Amazon storefront that has all of our different cookware, baking ingredient, like bakeware and everything that we use in the kitchen. We also have a link to our cookbook, which is Learn to Cook with Elsie Jensen. My chicken pot pie recipe's in there. My peach crisp recipe is also in this cookbook, as well as 110 other delicious recipes. And every recipe has a QR code to a video of me cooking it. But again, guys, thank you so much.